The church is God's hope for the world. And right now, there are over 400 million children across the world living in extreme poverty. 400 million children in need of hope. This is why Compassion International exists. For over 60 years, Compassion has partnered with the church to release children from poverty in Jesus' name. At its core, Compassion is a child development organization that cares for children in poverty through child sponsorship. But this kind of sponsorship looks different with Compassion. So what does different look like? First, it looks like the church working together. We partner with churches in the US to sponsor children, and with over 6,000 churches in developing nations to deliver resources and programming to those children throughout their entire childhood. This kind of sponsorship looks like relationship. Compassion connects one child with one sponsor to help the child achieve his or her God-given potential. The relational investment made through a sponsor's letter to their child is often the thing that helps that child believe that they don't have to live in poverty forever. This kind of sponsorship looks like holistic care. Children sponsored through Compassion receive physical care, educational care, social care, and most importantly, spiritual care, all from their local church. In the last year alone, over 125,000 children made first-time decisions to follow Jesus. That's 1 every 4 minutes. And for your church, this kind of sponsorship looks like the Great Commission. By partnering with Compassion, your entire church is equipped to serve as global missionaries. And the result is that powerful transformation takes place on both sides. Children meet Jesus and are discipled in a local church. And here in the US, sponsors in your church become more globally aware, more engaged, and more generous. This is what sponsorship with Compassion looks like.
Well, good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing? Good. My name is John Wiss. I am the creative leader here at the church at Severn Run. And as you noticed from outside and from the videos, today is Compassion Sunday. And so the first thing we wanted you to do was kind of get an idea of what Compassion is all about. And now we want you to know how our church is personally having a relationship with Compassion and with these kids that they sponsor. So this is Kevin Sard. Kevin Sard is our former missions director here at the Church of Severn Run. He had to step down because he had to move away, but he is one of the main reasons why we have such a tight connection with Compassion. He has a heart for Compassion International, and he is the one who really got us the ball rolling. He won't say that, but he's the one that really got the ball rolling here, and is the reason why we're even having this today. So, Kevin, go ahead and tell us a little bit about how we came to have a relationship with Compassion here at Severn Run.
Well, thank you, John. I started attending Severn Run in 2007. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but at the time I was a volunteer for Compassion International. I had been doing some volunteer work for them, and after I got a little comfortable with my new church, I started asking if there was any involvement with Compassion here. And I was told by the staff that no, there wasn't. So I said, well, I'd like to do a Compassion Sunday. And they said, okay, well, we'll need to talk to Pastor Drew about that. So I said, okay. And so being new, the new kid on the block, and being kind of timid, I didn't want to push things, so I just started praying. And I'd mention it every once in a while, and they'd say, okay, yeah, we're going to get Pastor Drew. We'll talk to him about it. So, some weeks went by and some months went by, and I kept praying. And then in the fall of 2009, I was sitting right back there, and Pastor Drew walked out on the stage, and he said, I want to announce that we're going to begin a partnership with a church in Williso, Ethiopia, through Compassion International. Now, he had heard about Compassion International at the Global Leadership Summit and was so impressed that he made the decision that the church was going to do this partnership. So while John says that, it was my leadership that did it, I'd still give the glory to God, because it was through some prayer and Pastor Drew's vision and his passion for reaching the world that the church decided to have that partnership. And since that time, annually we do a Compassion Sunday as we're doing today, and so there are child packets out there and people who will help you if you feel led to sponsor a child. But we do more than that through the partnership at Williso Maserati Christos Church. We have helped them put up a building, which is a library resource building, so the children can go and have a place to study. They have tutors that come there that volunteer and help these children that live in poverty just kind of keep up with the rest of their classmates. We've also helped raise funds to modernize the interior of the church. They put in, the church was just a tin building with some sticks that held the tin up, and so we were able to fund the addition of real wood interior inside and to refurbish their sound system. We did that, and I know that the worship tribe has helped them financially with some of their instrumentation and things like that. So we help more than just through child sponsorship, and we also, it's very important to understand that it is not just a resourced church helping a financially unresourced church. It's a partnership, and so that partnership, there are benefits for both partners. And so our faithful prayers and is an encouragement to them. I know that they really do appreciate those, but they also, it's a two-way street. So if you've been on a mission trip there, you'll hear from some people who have been. Their hearts are touched. And if you're a sponsor of a child, you know your heart is touched when you receive that letter from your child. So it is definitely something that benefits both parties.
And in a lot of ways, our relationship with that church in particular is tighter because a lot of the children that are sponsored through this church are from that community, right?
Yes. We have about 200, we have over 200 sponsors, child sponsors in the church at Severn Run through Compassion International. And the majority of them are through the ET 308 project, which is the project there at our partner church. But we also have children who are sponsored in South American countries and other countries around the world. So, but yes, we
and real quick, so one of the neat things that we get to do is we get to go to that community and meet the children that we sponsor. And you had that opportunity. Tell us a little bit about that, Kevin.
I did. I was there, and it was very emotional for me. I'd been on trips before, what they call home visits, where you go, you sit in the family's home. But when I had the opportunity to go sit in my child's home, it was kind of emotional because his family is the poorest of the poor. They have nothing, and so it was about 10:30 in the morning, and his mother was there, and the interpreter said, "Well, you know, she has problems with drugs," and I could tell he was telling me the truth because of her demeanor and kind of the glassiness in her eyes. And then his father walked in, again, about 10:30 in the morning, and I could smell the alcohol on him. And so, you know, clearly he had some problems with alcohol. So I realized that the $38 a month that I was sending to support Sharon Black, he had more problems than that $38 was going to fix. But it also gave me the realization that I needed the team at Williso Maserati Christos Church to care for someone that I cared about. And also, it was just a reminder that even though we're thousands of miles apart, that happens every time, that God is ultimately taking care of him. So.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for the job that you've done through Compassion. This is just one of the stories that we want to tell you guys today about not only our relationship with Compassion, but how Compassion is impacting our people. A lot of times, you know, we think of missions as, again, as Kevin said, going and doing work or telling somebody somewhere else. But what we've learned through this partnership and through a lot of our partnerships is we're maybe more highly impacted by them and the faith and the things that they bring to our lives than the other way around. So we have a couple videos. We're going to show you one video now of one of those stories, and then we're going to bring out a couple people who actually just got back from Ethiopia in February to give you just a firsthand account of what they saw. So take a look.
At the end, when the kids were saying goodbye and they had to go, it was just, you could see they didn't want to go. They would have rather stayed, but they loved every sponsor. They loved who they got. They loved that they got to spend time together. But they loved the gifts, but not as much as their sponsor. And then just watching them when they opened their gifts. Oh my gosh, the eyes just said so much. Everything from a box of crayons to a pair of pants to whatever it was the biggest treasure they had ever gotten. And then to watch them going around and sharing with each other what they got and the love and how they even were appreciative of each other of what they got. If one child got bubbles, Pastor John gave his child bubbles, and the child had never seen bubbles before. And the other kids were just so thrilled for him that he got bubbles. And I don't know, it just really touched my heart, because we in America, we don't do that. We don't appreciate the little things in life, and we're very spoiled. And so to watch them and know how much they've appreciated just the little things, the dollar from the dollar store or whatever they got, and it just has reminded me again how grateful we need to be and thankful for the little things that God has given us.
So this is Sean, Gloria, and Gwen. They just got back from Ethiopia in February. They went to Williso, and all three of them have sponsored children. Go ahead and tell us just a little bit about your sponsored children, how many you have, and what their ages are. Gwen, you want to start?
Okay, I have three. One, Erica is 13 and she's in Ghana. Terafu is 8 and she's in Ethiopia. And Abdi is 14 and he's in Ethiopia. So, that's it.
Go ahead.
I have 4 total, 2 girls, 11 years old, who we sponsored through our sister church in Ethiopia, 1 8-year-old boy who's 2 miles maybe at the most from our sister church from different side, and I have another 8-year-old boy in Philippines.
At this point, we have no children, but that was because of a financial decision we made early in the year, but we are now ready to sponsor another, so we are looking hopefully to sponsor a child from 308.
Awesome. So some of you may recognize Sean. Sean was up here before they went to Ethiopia to talk about his decision to go. And so after having gone now and come back and had a little bit of time to process, just share one of the most impactful things that you saw while you were there.
Yeah, there's a lot to try to think about with that question, but the one that I've shared a lot lately is day one. Day one, we check in at the Compassion office. We got to meet their leadership team, actually the director, which was really, really cool. It was very unusual for him to be there at the time that we were there. But they took us on a tour of the building and kind of came upon the room. It was about a 15 by 10 room. All the 4 walls were lined with mail slots, and there was a big table in the middle. 4 people were working at that table, and there were stacks, probably 2 feet tall, of letters. And this office is the office that actually catalogs, documents, and translates all the letters that we, as sponsored parents or as sponsored children, back and forth. And it was very overwhelming in that time. It was very real. All the things we see on TV and we hear about days like today, it was very real. And it was also even more real when they introduced themselves, and 2 of the gentlemen, they were actually sponsored children, were able to go to university and now are giving back, serving as translators for all of us.
Yeah, very cool. And Gwen has a really awesome story. So you've had us sponsor children in Ethiopia for a while now, and letter writing, you got a first-hand experience of how important letter writing can be to those kids.
So Abdi's been my sponsored child for 7 years. And when we went back this time, I had sent a picture that we took all together with all of us, and he ran in and got the picture out and brought it in to us, and it was so worn. They had opened it and closed it so many times. Letters are important to them. They really are. If we could try to write 1 a month, but they really matter to their family. And they kept them in some place. I don't know if the mom said that they kept it in the Bible. So when he wrote it out, it was worn and tattered, but it's just a reminder to me how important those letters are, and I need to be more diligent in getting those out.
And Gloria, so Gloria has come back from Ethiopia kind of on fire. She's been telling everybody about her trip and about compassion. What on the trip kind of flipped that switch for you and brought you back with so much fire to tell everybody about these kids?
Yes, so I survived 15-hour flight to Ethiopia, which was a big win, and to visit the headquarters, Ethiopian headquarters, the site headquarters, and meet the director, who's really on fire about how to translate this. Our mission, Compassion's mission, is helping these children in poverty in the name of Christ. And on in his office wall, there is the saying is it's still about Jesus. And that's his daily reminder. And to see the sites and to visit our sister church, Woliso, and see the facilities growing with our children. Actually, Severn Run is supporting over 200 children in that site alone, and which was just awesome. And meeting the program director and visiting my sponsor child, 2 girls, their home visit, and also witnessing one of daughter's father accepting Christ on the spot. It was just amazing. And the biggest giveaway for me was on the way back from Woliso to Ethiopia. It was about a 2-hour bus ride. I sat between Sean and our facilitator leader from Compassion, Mark Gary, and sat down. I just drilled him down with all the questions, all the things that I had in mind. So how is Compassion financially responsible? How are you able to ensure reaching out to children of the poorest side of the neighborhood? And how is this leader selected? How is church responsible? And everything from top macro level all the way down to micro level, I just drilled him down, and he answered me with such a grace and such a good answers. At the end of the day, he asked, maybe Gloria, you can step up and be a volunteer for represent the church. I said, yes, sign me up. So that's how it went.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So just kind of going off of that, I mean, people give $38 a month. There's a lot of charities that ask us for our money all the time. So you guys got to see that money at work on the ground. Where does our $38 go? What did you guys see? What programs did you see that, above and beyond even what they use for the children themselves, what did you guys see?
So real quick, one fact that was pretty powerful right away is there's lots of organizations that do what Compassion does, but they are the only one at this point that can stand up and say that their average is 82% of the funds that are given go to the people. The rest of it is what runs the organization. So that's a big deal. That's a lot of money. So one of the things we got to see, it was a surprise because of the weather. They had to change course, so we get to go to another location. And so when you sponsor your child, it's $38 for that child, but some of those funds are now being used in other fashions. And what we got to see was a facility where women who have become pregnant up to 2 years old, because you cannot sponsor a child until they're, I think it's 5 and above, school age. But what they do is they teach them prenatal care. They've been able to help eliminate the transmission of AIDS from the pregnant mother to the baby. How that happens, I have no idea. It's amazing. And then also just loving on them, and it's a facility where they live and spend day to day, and they just learn to be how to be healthy and how to raise their children a little better too. And then those kids become part of Compassion after that. So that's one way.
Heather, you've had another one?
Gwen, look up.
Gwen, go.
No, and for $38 a month, that might seem like a lot, but if we were honest, we go out to eat a lot more than that, and we do a lot of things here with that money. Whereas, to feed and clothe and provide a school, that was one of the things that I love about Compassion. Every child in the Compassion program goes to school and they learn about Jesus, so just think how many lives that Severn Run is touching and how many other people are touching lives. Even though we are not there physically, what we pay goes so it helps boys and girls to know the love of Jesus through the money that we give.
Awesome.
When I came back from the trip, I was so excited, like you, John, mentioned, and I will bring the coffee that I bought from Ethiopia and share it to my colleagues. I'll brew coffee and said, hey, fresh from Ethiopia, come and drink it. And I'll just share my stories. And one of the biggest things to share because it's hard to share. It's a faith-based. But at the same time, there was a great study done by economist Professor Bruce Weidick, and it's on the compassion side. And he compared Compassion International's growth at 21-year-old when they grow up and how they adjust to the society and how they feel the job is to the other children sponsoring organization. And the study is just so profound. And from there, I was able to engage in the conversation saying, you guys should read about it. It's like 50 pages long, but if you can just read the abstract, there is a gist of it. But just to put some analytical behind it, there is a study that shows that compassion is so well organized, and it is encompassing not just education piece, but character building piece, and also family and everything that surrounds it, because it's through the local church and volunteers in the area. So you can see that impact. $35 is really, I mean, I can skip 2 lunches and that's my $35. So a week, I mean, that's just what it is. And to see their faces, it's so excitement, just comes together, worshiping together was just it's worthy cause.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing. Thank you for going. Let's give them a round of applause real quick. And take a look at another story we have.
When I first came to Ethiopia a little over 2 years ago, I did not have any sponsored children because I felt like maybe we should be doing more for the children in our country. But someone took me aside and explained to me why compassion was here. And before I left to come home, I had 2 sponsored children. My one girl is 17, wants to be an engineer, and she is now in college, which that is such a joy for me. My other little girl, when I first sponsored her, was so serious, didn't smile, and it kind of left me like, what's wrong with me that she doesn't feel the love that I have, Coming back after 2+ years, when she saw me, there was this biggest smile on her face. And she just threw her arms around me and said, I love you. And the biggest joy for her yesterday when we did our gifts was, out of the coloring books, the doodle books, the little stuffed animal, when she saw this box of crayons, I thought she was going to choke me to death. She just threw her arms around me so much and said, I love you, I love you. And it has changed me profoundly, and I will keep coming back to Ethiopia as long as God allows me to.
So we see a world in which there's so much bad, and it's what makes the news, and we wonder about, why is the world so bad? Well, the world is so bad because it is so very, very broken. The reality is that God has an answer to the bad, and it is Jesus Christ. And people say, well, where is Jesus? Well, look next to you, to your left and right, and there is Jesus. And that is why Jesus said, as the Father has sent me, so I am sending you. And so we go and we build long-term relationships, eternal friendships with those across the oceans. And we go here and we build eternal relationships with those who are in Severn, in Glen Burnie, in Odenton, in West Baltimore, in Curtis Bay, in Central Baltimore, in Brooklyn Park, in East Baltimore. We go. And I'm so excited to introduce to you Ms. Vicki Dallaire. Vicki has multiple, hold your applause for 1 second, and then make it so loud that we're all deaf. Vicki, she is part-time on staff leading in our impact area, in our missions. And she has numerous full-time jobs. She's a mother, she's a teacher, and she is leading us to be the good, be the change, to be Jesus in our city. So let's welcome Miss Vicki Dallaire.
Good morning. Okay, so Pastor Drew asked me to come up here today and tell you guys a little bit about my story and why I'm standing here today. My story is a lot like Pastor Drew's story from last week. It's a story of broken. It's broken, feeding broken in a godless household. And it was a lot of anger, it was alcoholism, it was tension, it was fighting. And through that, I learned growing up to just kind of keep that all in and make it look good on the outside. I learned how to hide my true self and how to stay strong for everybody to see me. So, wouldn't that be so sad if that was my story? Like if it just stopped there? But it doesn't, because of this guy named Jesus. And Jesus met my parents when I was in high school. Now, I was a middle child, so I get extra broken points for that. But through my extra broken and my parents, I fought back hard. I hated God. Who would do that? Who would let me go through that? Who would let me suffer? Who would let me stay in this pain and bring these things on an innocent kid and processing all of that? And I fought him for a really long time until I realized that I was fighting somebody I claimed not to exist. So then I had to get over that. And so finally I submitted my life to Christ, and life actually got harder. And challenges kept coming up, and God kept pushing me and growing me. And I had to really get intentional about Jesus if I wanted him to give me the joy that he claims to provide. So I got intentional, and God kept growing me, and I asked him to break my heart. I asked him to break my heart for everything that breaks his heart, and I asked him to show me where I was lacking. And what he showed me was that I was really selfish. I was really hypocritical because I wanted to have my faith my way. I was selfish about my faith. I wanted it because I wanted the joy and I wanted it for me. And he was like, that's not how it works. It's me for the world, not me just for you. So he broke my heart. And you know that whole ask and you shall receive? He did. And he showed me all the broken all around me all the time. And I think he was prepping me for a big turning point in my life. He wanted to show me that my broken story was to be used for his glory. So one day, I'm sitting on my back porch, and my neighbor, who I knew was not a believer, we had tried to connect with him, and he had resisted, and we just, didn't want to make him uncomfortable, so we just left him alone in a way. We were kind. I was out on my back porch. He was out on his back porch, out of my eye line, and he committed suicide. I actually thought he had fallen off a ladder. I ran over and found him there. He had shot himself, and it just wrecked my heart for all of those missed opportunities that I had to share Jesus with him. Because hell's a real place. Like, if you're a believer, you know that hell is a real place, and people really go there. And that missed opportunity for my life just utterly shattered what I thought I was supposed to be doing with my life. And God just completely transformed my heart and gave me a heart for the broken. And so I had to start walking it out. I couldn't be a hypocrite anymore. I couldn't stay to myself. I had to go face the broken world and see how God wanted to use me. So I did, and so I'm standing here. And I decided I was going to, join the missions team, and then I found out that Kevin Sard was moving away. And I was like, okay, so now what? And they said, you can do it. And here I am. So that's how that works. No, but really, how do you know that you're called to be missional? You're saved.
Amen.
God called you. He called you up to send you out. He wants you to go out to the broken world. So, in seeing that and in knowing God's heart and in wanting to never disappoint God again with missing an opportunity to speak into somebody's life, what I know to be true, we have to go. And so I just want to kind of connect the dots a little bit for you, what that means for the missions for the Church at Severn Run. It's kind of like Simon Says. We all like Simon Says as a kid. God says, come to me like a child. Well, now it's Jesus says. Jesus says, go. Jesus says, pray. Jesus says, make disciples. Jesus says, be intentional. You've got to be on purpose. If not, you're just not in the game of your life. So we've got to get on the road, and that means letting this missions thing permeate every single part of what we do here at the Church at Severn Run. It means getting personal, really connecting with Jesus one-on-one, face-to-face, because if you really do believe, then you really do know that you're going to face him one day, face-to-face, just you and him, and he's going to ask you what you did and didn't do and why. Why were you too busy? Why didn't you care enough? Because every time we pass by somebody that doesn't know Jesus, it's literally allowing them to die. It's allowing them to commit suicide and just turn the other way. But you have the answer, and you have the cure to that pain and that death. And we can be a part of the solution, and we can be a church that is missionally minded. So it starts with getting personal and getting intentional, getting that alone time with God and being a church that prays. And then it starts in our small groups. It's in our families, it's in our homes. Are you discipling to your kids? Are you witnessing as a couple, as a married couple, as a family? Are you guys out to dinner and showing who Jesus is by the way you treat each other? And then our small groups, going out in those deeper connections and really being on purpose to develop that passion in other people for being the church. It's about congregation. So as a congregation, our plan is to have at least 5 annual things on our calendar where we can just be the church as a people out of this building. Because as soon as we walk out of here, we are on the mission field. And it's about our partner relationships, the church planters in our area, the partner ministries in our area, plugging in with them and being the hands and feet of Jesus together in community, in eternal friendships and relationships. And it's about thinking globally with our partners abroad, the Dominican Republic, Compassion International, Ethiopia. There's so many different ways that you could change the world. You just have to be willing to go. You have to be willing to get out of your seat, to get out of your comfort zone and just go. Allow him to lead you. Allow him to have full access to your life. So that's what we're looking for.
So Vicki, what is a specific action step, like even on the website, I think that we have a way that we could kind of gather some interested folks?
Yes. So number 1 is to pray and ask God where he's leading you. And number 2 is go to the website, severnrun.com/impact, and there's a little tiny form. It takes you like 30 seconds to fill it out. And just let us know that you're ready to be intentional about your relationship with God and what he says to do, to be obedient to him. And
Thank you, Vicki. Praise God. The Word of God says that we are God's masterpieces in Ephesians 2:10. Now, I feel more like a mess than a masterpiece most of the time. Anybody with me? God says we are God's masterpieces, and he has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things that he planned for us to do long ago, before this world ever began, before it ever broke apart. Father knew what he was going to do to bring it back together in Jesus. And what he was going to do was send his only son to live a sinless life, an amazing, non-religious, God-full, kingdom-bringing life, and then he was going to pass that life on. And he passed it on generation to generation to people who believe. Broken people. People who weren't good enough, people who didn't have it all together, people who were still very much in journey. He passed it on to us. Jesus literally said, as the Father has sent me, in the exact same way, I am sending you. We think that we're going to get happy by focusing on ourselves and getting the life that we imagine. We're not going to be happy that way. We're going to be self-centered that way. We're going to be consumers that way. We're going to be happy when we're living that purpose, our created purpose. And that means going in the mess that we are with the Christ that we're given and being the good in the world. Sometimes that's going to be programmatic. In other words, there's going to be specific programs that we do together, and it's going to look like that sometimes. I want to tell you that a lot of the time it's not. The kingdom of heaven is not a program. It's a movement. It's a movement of the Spirit of Jesus. Jesus said the wind blows where it wills. You can't see where it comes from or where it's going. And so what this means is as you walk your life, you look around for the broken in your life. And you don't walk by it. You don't ignore it. Matthew 25:40 says, I tell you the truth, inasmuch as you did it for one of the least of these, you did it for me. And so the truth is that instead of having a pyramid-type top-down program where you're waiting for the Church of Severn to twist your arm to go, the Spirit of God is in you in Christ and is calling you to go and is opening your eyes to see that you are the masterpiece of God. You are the good of God sent to the bad of the world, and you will be His light and His salt in this world. And so there ought to be ministries that just, percolate up and pop up all over the place. If you see broken and God plants an idea in your head, about doing something, sure, you pray about it, but it's kind of like how hard do you have to pray about doing good? This person is hurting and they're lost and they're on their way, to hell. Do I share with them the love of Jesus? I think the answer is yes. Quick compassion story. One of the ladies in the child development program, as they were teaching her how to nurse and to raise her child, one of the ladies was just talking about how important it was to talk to your child and tell them that you loved them. This girl was astonished. She had never seen, nor had it ever occurred to her to tell her child that she loved him. She had never heard it from her parents, had never seen it in her broken world, and a look of joy came over her face, and it was just this astonishment that I actually can love. Now that sounds silly to you and I, but what God is saying in sending you is you actually can love. And so, how are you to love as Jesus in the world? That's what I want you to do right now. That's what I want you to pray about. And what we're going to do is get into groups of 5 to 7 people. If you're not yet, if you're a pre-Christian, not yet a believer, and you do not wish to pray, that's perfectly fine. I honor your journey and thank you for your openness in being here. If you are a believer, I don't care whether you're comfortable praying out loud or not. You have a conversation with the God of the cross about comfort, and then come back to me and tell me how that goes, okay? But if you're a believer, then I want you just to gather quickly in a group, 5 to 7 people, quickly introduce yourself. You can tell your life story at lunch later. And then just pray in a couple of sentence prayers and ask God how we go. How we go as a church. Ask God how you go as His daughter or His son. Gather in your groups and let's pray.